So we'll continue our chapter 6 discussion. We were discussing chapter 6 and we have reached till verse 34. In last week, we have seen how Arjuna asks a question to Krishna that this yoga system looks to be very difficult. How to do it, right? So let's see what Krishna says. He says, this mind is actually very, very difficult to control. And even it's more difficult to control than the winds as well. Okay, so let's chant the prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Salakya Chakshurunitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Adesatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So in chapter 6, let's have a quick revision of chapter 6 and then we'll continue where we were. So in chapter 6, we have seen how Krishna provides information about the two levels of Ashtanga or yogis, the neophyte level and advanced level. Then we discussed about the importance of controlling the mind. Then Krishna speaks about different stages of Ashtanga yoga's process. And then he also talked about the perfection of yogis and how to attain those perfections. However, in last session, we see that how Arjuna, he asks a question that, oh Krishna, the process you are describing actually looks to be very impractical, very difficult for people to follow. And it's like, it's very difficult to control the mind. It's then controlling the wind. So to discuss today what Krishna gives the answer to him. Okay. Okay, so I've shared my screen. Hope you can see the screen. The fonts are okay as well.
Yes, Prabhuji, font is brilliant.
Okay. So this was 34 where Arjuna says about Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramadi balavad vradam tasyam nigraham manne vayur eva suduskrudam. So Arjuna says that the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think it's more difficult than controlling the wind. And before that, 33, Arjuna says, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unerrable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So the process which has been described by Krishna, or Ashtanga yoga process, it actually looks impractical, and because the mind is restless and unsteady. And then he says that mind is quite unsteady, restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, right? And here, actually, Prabhupada's discuss about very nice things. Actually, we had to discuss yesterday on Friday, but we stopped there. So we'll continue discussing this verse a bit more regarding the Prabhupada's purport, and we'll continue from there. Okay. So this verse where Arjuna says that the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, to subdue it, I think it's more difficult than controlling the wind. And Prabhupada says in the purport that yes, the mind is so strong. And you'll see in next verse, in 35, Krishna says, yes, Arjuna, I agree with you. This is very difficult to control. So Prabhupada says the mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence. Although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. So, and then by saying this statement, Prabhupada actually quotes from Katha Upanishad about this Atmanam Rathinam Vidhi. So there are stages how this mind should be controlled by intelligence, and the mind should control the senses of those things, right? So we'll try to read this, and then we'll discuss this point, what he says. Prabhupada says it. So he says that individual is the passenger in a car or the metal body, and the intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. So the self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in association of the mind and the senses. So it is understood by the great thinkers. So this is being spoken in Kathopanishad, right? And then says the intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence. As an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine, such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly persons like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? So this point is very important here, is because, Arjuna was actually, we discussed a bit Friday as well. Arjuna was not difficult for him to control the mind. If you see, Arjuna has done so many yogic practice. He actually got so many, astras. And also we have seen this past times when Arjuna went to Indraloka. Then also in Apsaras, he wanted to associate with Arjuna, but Arjuna says that, no, you are like my mother, right? So that kind of control of mind, intelligence Arjuna had, but still he's saying that it looks impractical. So Prabhupada says that such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. Why Arjuna says a worldly person? Because actually he is a Kshatriya, he is a warrior. He has to rule the kingdom. He has to take care of all this, all the kingdom peoples. That's why Prabhupada is saying that he is a worldly person. However, so what to speak about we modern people, and hence this simile used here is appropriate. So one cannot capture the blowing wind, and so that the context is, if one cannot capture the blowing wind, so how can we control the mind? And it is even more difficult to capture to turbulent mind, right? So wind is still blowing, but mind is turbulent. We were discussing the other day, like how mind is very turbulent, very flickering. That a monkey is more flickering in nature, and that monkey has drunk and also been beaten by scorpion and been beaten by some person. So he's completely bewildered, right? And it's very difficult to control that monkey. So your mind is more powerful or more unsteady than that monkey, right? So, and Prabhupada says the easiest way to control the mind, as says by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humanity. So the Mitra prescribes is as Save Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor. So this is verse, it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, and where you see how can we engage all our senses to the pleasure of Lord Sri Hari, right? So let's see, let me share that screen, and we'll actually try to dig in more about this analogy of mind, the chariot, the vehicle, the intelligence, and the reins and the horses. Okay, so there are two pictures I want to share, so we'll go one by one. Can you see this picture?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So it's been described that these 5 horses are compared to the 5 senses we have. And I think we all know about our senses, 5 senses, right? So these horses are 5 senses. Just imagine, and these reins which actually control the horses are compared to the mind. And the driver, so this is whole chariot, right? In chariot, there's a passenger, and the chariot being driven by a driver, and the chariot has 5 horses. So these 5 horses are being controlled by the driver through reins. So we know that, if he pulls the right reins, so which are being connected by the mouths of the horses, so they start going left or right depending upon how the reins are being pulled. Right. So just imagine, before going to the actual analogy about how this compared to our body. So just imagine if the 5 horses, even just imagine if you have one horse being driving the chariot, and the horse is not being controlled by the driver, or he's let free, can the passenger will reach a destination? Never, because if horse is uncontrolled, horse will go here and there. And here in this example, it's 5 horses. So 5 horses that are now compared to our senses. So if our 5 senses are let loose, if they are not in control, then so 5 horses will go in 5 directions, and certainly chariot will not go to his destination. Rather, the passenger is going to fall down from here on itself, right? Or chariot may broke here and there. So these 5 senses are our senses. I mean, these 5 horses are our senses, and hence, if senses are uncontrolled, then the destination of the passenger will not reach it. So it means our actual destiny is to actually go back to spiritual world, or even if being in this world, we need to understand, or we need to know our self, who am I, or to engage ourselves in the service of Lord. Right? So that process will not happen when these senses are not being controlled. So how these horses are being controlled? The horses are being controlled by the reins, and who controls is the driver. So the reins are compared to the minds. So the mind should control the senses. At the same time, this driver is compared to intelligence, and the intelligence, as the driver controls the reins, and hence as the reins are being controlled, the horses are being controlled. So when the intelligence controls this mind, and the mind controls these senses from interacting with the sense objects, then definitely the chariot will actually land towards go towards its destination. And the passenger is compared to the Atma, or the self. We know that we are not his body, we are spirit soul. So as the chariot to move smoothly forward, this driver has to control the horses using the reins. And hence, as a living entity, we need to go towards spiritual sky, spiritual world, engage ourselves in devotional service. To do it properly, our intelligence should control our mind, and then mind should control the senses. Right? That was analogy as Prabhupada gives in the purport. I'll share one more screen. I mean, it's basically the same one, but in a different way. Can you see this now?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can.
Yes, again the same picture, but maybe in a different kind of logical way. So these are the 5 senses we all know, and these 5 senses. So there are pictures of 6 horses. Maybe just imagine, and many horses as well, right? So this horse is called as mind. So that's reins are actually compared to mind, and these horses are our senses, and this driver is compared as buddhi or intelligence. And hence, if everything is properly shifted, the driver control these reins, and reins control these horses, and then the passenger or the living entity will actually end up in his final destinations. And if these are uncontrolled, everything get distracted. Right? Does that make sense? So that was what Prabhupada wanted to speak us in the purport, that the individual is a passenger in the car of a material body, and this car we saw that as a chariot, and the intelligence is the driver, and the mind is the driving instrument or the reins, and the senses are the horses. So the self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in association of the mind. So if the reins are not controlled properly, and the horses goes here and there, definitely the passenger is going to suffer. isn't it? He's going to fall here and there, or okay, he'll gonna shout to the driver, okay, please control this car properly, right? In that way. And if this control properly, then he may enjoy, he may go in the right path, right? So the point is, again, the importance of controlling the mind, and the mind should be controlled through intelligence. And at the end, Prabhupada nicely says that easiest way, especially in this Kali Yuga, to control the mind is as given or suggested by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, right? And Mahaprabhu says that Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam Kalau Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyatha. There is no other way, no other way, no other way than chanting the holy name in this Kali Yuga for our deliverance, right? And also we discussed about this Amrit Maharaj, this slokas, Savipam Savemana Krishna Pradaravindayor. Right. So engage the mind in the lotus feet of the Lord, engage the hands, in cleaning the temple, engage your legs to our going to temple, engage your tongue to taste Krishna Prasadam, engage your nose to smell the tulsi leaf or smell the flowers being offered to Lord Krishna, right? And this way we can actually control the agitated mind, right? So just trying to control the mind or subdue the mind, it's actually very, very difficult. However, when we give the mind a proper engagement, right, or giving the mind to a higher taste, actually will give up the lower taste by its default. We don't have to worry about it. So that's how engaging ourselves in something better. So in that way, automatically the negativity will go away. We sometimes say and think that, okay, if we engage our mind in positivity, even in distress, we can actually remain calm, isn't it? Unless and until if we try to engage ourselves in more negativity, we'll actually get more distress as well, right? So better to engage ourselves in something higher. So higher is in a scale. If you see our axis, you will see the negative are on the below, and the 0 is the neutral, and the positive on the upper side. So if we engage ourselves in something higher, we actually elevate ourselves. So that was analogy what Prabhupada wanted to say about controlling the mind. As Arjuna says that it's even difficult to control the mind than controlling the turbulent wind. So let's see what Krishna says to answer Arjuna. Okay, text 35. So till 34 we have discussed, but we haven't discussed the purport properly on Friday. So we have discussed that part now. So text 35, where Krishna is going to say to Arjuna that what he spoke, that he is saying, okay, oh Krishna, the yoga process you described actually looked very impractical. The reason was that mind is turbulent, mind is unsteady, mind is very, very difficult to control. It's very strong. So Krishna says, text 35, Sri Bhagavan Vacha Asamsyam Mahabhavo Manodirnikra Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagena cha grihate. Krishna is saying, Asamsyam Mahabhavo. Oh Arjuna, yes, you are right. Asamsya, there is no doubt, undoubtedly. Prabhupada says undoubtedly, right? So, oh Arjuna, undoubtedly the mind, let's read it out. Lord Krishna said, O mighty son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind. So as Arjuna said, mind is very difficult to control. Krishna is saying, yes, you are correct. The mind is actually very, very difficult to control. But it is possible. Krishna says again that, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha grihate. Yes, however, we can control it. How can we control it? But it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So two things is required to control the mind: regular or suitable practice and by detachment, right? So these are two ways by which we can actually control the mind. What are those? By suitable practice and by detachment. And Prabhupada says that how, what are the ways to be detached. And also we discussed just now as well that engaging ourselves in something higher. So let's see how Prabhupada try to make us understand that these points. So Prabhupada says the difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind as expressed by Arjuna is accepted by the personality of Godhead. So Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna also accept the fact that yes, the mind is very difficult to control, right? But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment, it is possible. So what is their practice? So in the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulation of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the super soul, restraining the senses and the mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. All the other process which we have discussed in this chapter, isn't it? Going to a sacred place, control your completely, give up your sense gratifications, and control your senses properly. By your eyes, just look at the tip of a nose, and then your all body postures, and this is very, very difficult to do it, right? Hence, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord, and the first and foremost of such devotional engagement is hearing about Krishna. So the important point here is hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, right? So when we hear and chant about Krishna, this is how we engage in hearing about Krishna, and hence we can engage ourselves in different types of devotional services. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shravanam. So these are 9 processes where we can start about hearing about Krishna. So when we have hear about Krishna, we get attracted about Krishna. We chant his name, and when we actually remember Krishna. And in this way, our senses will go towards Krishna, right? And it can engage in Krishna. And that's why this is very, very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings, right? So earlier we discussed about how this in Chariot analogy, that how if the mind can be controlled through intelligence, and if we can engage ourselves in the process of devotional service, then actually it can become easier to control the mind, right? And hence Prabhupada also says that by detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagya, right? And vairagya means detachment from the matter and engagement of the mind in the spirit. Okay, so just by engaging ourselves, we can actually control the mind. We can get detachment. So detachment means what? Detachment is basically detachment from this material engagement, detachment from material desires. How can we achieve it? By attaching ourselves to Krishna. So the way to detach from the material world is actually to attach ourselves to Krishna. As I said earlier, we try to subdue our desires. It can make havoc sometimes in near future. But when we mold our desires towards serving Krishna, how can we do it? The very, very important point is, how can we do it? When we understand that the real identity of the us, or real identity of myself, is that I am eternal servant of Krishna. So if we understand that I am eternal servant of Krishna, definitely will eagerly try to engage ourselves in serving Krishna, isn't it? So unless and until we come to the point that actually we are a spiritual spark, and our nature, Jivara Sarupa, Nitya Krishna Dasa. So when we understand that we are eternal servant of Krishna, then we'll get attached toward Krishna. As we get attached toward Krishna, we gradually become detached to this material activities or material world. Right? As simple as that. Unless and until we engage ourselves something higher, it's very difficult to give up something lower, right? And Prabhupada just was say this is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit, right? So when we hear more and more about Krishna, we get attached. And even in Bhagavatam, if you remember the pastimes of Rukmani Devi, So Rukmani Devi, she has never seen Krishna earlier in this pastime anyway in Dwarka. So, however, she was just hearing about Rukmani Devi from many sages, and even Narad Muni is like, about Krishna. So just by hearing about Krishna, Rukmani Devi get attracted toward Krishna. So this is how, though that's in a higher level, but the point is, yes, even if we start hearing about Krishna, one can become automatically attached to Krishna. So when we hear more and more about anything, it's again in spiritual. So when we hear more about Krishna, we attach to Krishna, and that's become transcendental. But if we just think in a material world as well, if we hear about something, let's suppose if we are hearing about some sports, so we always try to deal with the sports, and we have to hear more and more about the sports. If we hear more about the political things, then we engage our more time on the political things. So in a similar way, when we hear more about Krishna, we actually become attracted toward Krishna, and engaging ourselves in hearing about Krishna is transcendental, and engaging ourselves in hearing about the sports and other things, it becomes material. But as we are in this material world, we do those things as well. We cannot avoid those things completely too, right? Again, Prabhupada makes another point. It's just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. So when we are hungry, actually we had more taste for the food, right? So the more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfied, or satisfaction and strength, right? So this point again is important, because it's talking about hunger. So when we are hungry, we actually look for food, and when we get the food, we start eating, and when we eat, we actually get satisfied and we get strength as well. So hunger should be there to hear about Krishna Katha. So when we are hunger towards hearing Krishna Katha, so Prabhupada says similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. So to get detached from material objectives, we have to attach ourselves with something transcendental, or the very best way or pure way and very easy way is to attach ourselves with Krishna Katha, chanting his holy name, hearing about him, right? Right. So that's all Krishna says about the two process, by detachment and by practice. So when we gradually practice to control this, so when it comes to practice, how you can do practice, like, okay, the acharyas and even the devotee, they explain about what practice means is. So practice means is that when we do an activity, right? When we do an activity and when we think that, okay, this activity, what I'm going to do is actually taking me toward Krishna, or is actually taking me away from Krishna. And then we decide, okay, if this activity actually is taking me away from Krishna, so gradually, slowly we start to avoid or go away from that areas. And hence we know that, okay, that's why practice, isn't it? So let's, for example, if someone asks, okay, let's go to pub, just for example, right? However, now we know that actually by going to pub, we get intoxicated and the things, and somehow or other, I'm in that time of frame, actually I'm going away from Krishna. So we can say to our intelligence says that, yes, this is not right place for me, because I'm going away from Krishna. And then he instructs the mind, okay, say, reject this proposal, say no. So the activity of mind is just only to do two things, either reject or accept. Mind never does anything else. It just accept or reject. Intelligence process it. So intelligence gives the options, this and this, and mind says, okay, I'll go here, I'll go there. Is accept or rejected, right? So gradually in going in practice, it happens. So that's why Krishna says, with practice and with detachment, right? Abhyasena, do practice, and vairagyena. So by practice and by detachment, we actually can control the mind, which is very, very obstinate, very difficult, turbulent, and unsteady, right? Okay, let's see the next verse. Even the next verse is actually Krishna concludes this point as well, that how can we control this mind by practice and detachment. Yeah. Text 36. Ashamsyatmana yogo drushpat dusprapa iti me mati vyasatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptum upayatah. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured for success. This is my opinion. So Krishna concludes saying that, if again point is same, if the mind is uncontrolled, the path of self-realization becomes difficult. And how mind is uncontrolled, we have just seen this. So if intelligence is being ruled by mind, then the mind becomes uncontrolled. If the mind is ruled by intelligence, or we see in this, if the driver has control over the reins, then the chariot will follow the path properly. Another way around, if the chariot driver cannot control the reins, so we see in the destruction of this chariot. Hence, by controlling the mind, which can be controlled by what? By practice and attachment. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha vidiyate. So by practicing gradually and going towards detachment, you can actually control the mind. And once mind is controlled, Krishna assures here, success is assured, right? So that's Krishna's opinion. So it's given by Krishna itself. So, and Prabhupada says the Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from mental engagement and can hardly achieve success in self-realization. So you may ask a question, so what to do? We are in this material world, isn't it? So the point here is that we are in this material world, somehow or other this Atma, this soul has entered in this body. We cannot give up our worldly things as well. But at the same time, actually we can regulate things. We can regulate things so that we can go towards self-realization gradually and gradually. Never look back. So we need to take step ahead. Gradually, let's, for example, chanting, right? So we start chanting, let's for two rounds now. So we can go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months for 2 rounds of chanting regularly, of Mahamantra chanting 2 rounds regularly. Then we are on the stage, okay, now my time, 24 hours is quite managed that I could chant 2 rounds without any fail for 2 months now. Then try to increase it to 3 to 4. That's another step. So go for some time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month with 4 rounds. And then we could see that, yes, somehow the time is actually being managed when we chant 4 rounds as well. And gradually, when we engage ourselves more with Krishna, with his holy name, we can actually engage ourselves more toward Krishna. We get detached from material world automatically. We don't have to endeavor for it, right? And Prabhupada says, another point here, very important point he makes here, that trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in mental enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. So sometimes people say, okay, let me practice this as well. Okay, at the same time, let me engage in mental enjoyment as well. Like, leading everything towards that. Okay, so that is not going to work. Why? The problem is, Prabhupada says that, if you want to ignite a fire and at the same time you're pouring water on top of it, the fire will not catch, isn't it? So yoga practice without control, without mental control, is a waste of time. And such a show of yoga may be material lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. So mentally, for outward, maybe we can say, okay, that he is a great yogi and things, but if the mind is not controlled properly, then it's actually useless in a spiritual realization. Right. So other person may think, okay, he has very nice yogi or control his mind properly, but internally he understands that where his position is. And therefore, one must control the mind by engaging in constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And Prabhupada makes a very bold statement here, and actually very fact as well, that unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. So to control the mind, the best way in this Kali Yuga is engage our mind in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so having concluded this part, and there is now again another question being asked by Arjuna. So we'll just take the questions, two questions being asked in 37 and 38, and then we'll discuss the next, or what Krishna says on Friday. I think two verses were 38 and 39. Yes, three verses where Arjuna asks questions. Okay, let's quickly revise it. So this is again a question. So 37. Arjuna uvacha yajati shraddhayotpeto ya yoga chalita manasaha aparapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim Krishna gacchati. So now Arjuna asking another question to Krishna, says, "O Krishna, what is the destination of an unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?" So it might happen that someone goes, and it's not that okay, everyone gets the destination in a very time. So because the mind is actually restless, and somehow in the start we do it, but somehow this yoga process, person actually he fails to achieve this perfection. What happens to him, right? And then we'll discuss it again on Friday as well. Then again, let's see the questions completely. So the questions asked by Arjuna is that what happens to the person, and Krishna, and then he says, Kachinna bhaye vibratas chinna brahm ivanashyati aparistho mahabaho vimudha brahmanapati. O mighty arm Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a raven cloud which has with no position in any sphere? So he's saying, okay, someone actually given up everything, and actually he rise up to some level. However, he has not reached the destination, and now he maybe look like, okay, where I am, neither here, neither here, right? So it's compared to a raven cloud. So what happens to him? Is it in the same position? Right. And then in 39 verse he says, let's see, etan me samsayam Krishna chetum arhasi asheshatah tvad anya samsyasya chetana hai upapadyate. Again he's watching this word asheshatah. So says, Krishna, please clear my doubt. So this is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So he's saying that, oh Krishna, no one can actually clear my doubt. So please clear this doubt. And what this question is, that is basically unsuccessful yogi where he lands, right? What happens to him? He has practiced something, and now he has, somehow or other not doing it. So what happens to him? Because he has given up. So when we rise something higher, we actually give up that lower test, right? So he has not completely achieved this perfection. So what happens to him now? So please guide me. And actually, after that, in where do we have? So there in Krishna starts explaining this in 2-3 verses, 41, 40, 41, and then till 47, Krishna goes on speaking about this last conclusion of this his in this last 7 slokas. So we'll try to cover this on Friday, where we'll see what Krishna says to Arjuna. Okay, so we'll stop here. Anyone have any questions or thoughts or want to share something? Please let us know.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Just very nice class. Thank you. Just 2 questions, basic questions. It's just to clearly understand. How do you define self-realization? Is it understanding Krishna, or what is self-realization?
Yeah. Okay. So the definition of self-realization means realizing our own self, isn't it? So realizing our own self means first there are three questions comes in it. So understanding that the who am I? This is a basic thing. So self-realization means understanding who am I. First is, am I this body or am I a spiritual spark?
Okay.
That's the first thing. And if I am spiritual spark, then who is the supreme one? And the realizing the Krishna or supreme God.
Okay.
And then third is that is there any relationship between him and me? So the other 3 things: understanding who am I, understanding who is God, and understanding what relationship I do have with these 2.
Okay.
That's a very, very basic answers to what self-realization is. And the deeper is again exploring these 3. Who am I? I'm not this body. It's very basic example, right? Let's suppose I see this is my hand, right? And I say, okay, this is my book. Okay, so what means I'm saying this is my book. So this book has some identity. This book belongs to a person. And when I say this is my hand, I don't say it's hand. It's this. We say this is my hand. So it means what? This hand belongs to me. Just imagine if I take out this hand, still I am here, isn't it? Hand is gone, but I am here. So who am I then? In a similar way, this is my hand. This is my hand. This is my head. This is my body. This is my leg. Take out everything. Take out the head. Take out the body. Take out hands. Take out the leg. Still, my is remain because my head is gone. I am there. Who is there? That is the soul, spiritual spark. Because of the spiritual spark, because of the soul, this everything is connected and working. Even if I disconnect my hand, still I can be alive. Yeah. However, if the spiritual spark goes away, even if the hands are connected, they won't function.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's the first understanding that yes, I am the spiritual spark. And then understanding that what it is, its nature is eternal, as Supreme Lord is eternal, is blissful, Sachidananda. But Krishna is supreme. The second level of understanding that who God is, how this cosmos has been created, and who is actually controlling everything. Krishna says in chapter 8, Maya Dakshina Prakriti Swida Sacharacharam. This actually everything has been controlled by me. Right. So that thing. And the third understanding is what relationship between these 2 have. And that's also very clearly says Jiva, means we understood that first level is Jiva. So Jiva Swarupa hai Nitya Krishna Das.
Okay.
And understanding this Jiva has actually eternal servant of Nitya Das, eternal servant of Krishna. So okay. This is very, very kind of quick answer to this question that what self-realization. But again, when we bring it practical, it actually takes a long time to understand things as well.
Sure. I think actually, because whenever I see that term self-realization, I always had this doubt. So I wanted to clear that to just make sure I understand it right. And the second one is, this is again also very basic one, just to clarify. We always say material, material enjoyment, material. What exactly are we speaking about? Like, are the 4 regulatory principles are we telling, or in general, any material activities are we speaking?
Yes. So when we say material enjoyment means, it says, I'm forgetting the words, but it says when we do something by forgetting Krishna,
Okay.
and when we do it for our own sense gratification, right? Let's suppose, and see, when we read in chapter 5, the last verse says Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram. So the real actual enjoyer or benefactor of everything is Krishna, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we say, the point comes is basically understanding that I am everything.
Yeah.
So whatever I am doing, actually I am doing, so I am the only proprietor of everything, and I am the one who should enjoy everything. That mentality, that thought is called as, trying to enjoy the material sense gratification things, right?
Okay.
So when we say that, okay, I have earned this money, it's actually by the grace of Krishna only. Otherwise, it's not possible. So
True.
though we have to work, but there's a grace of Krishna is there, the grace of God is there. That's why we have got it. And then when we actually offer it as an obligation to Krishna, like, as we see, when we discussed about this circle of sacrifice, where the living entity has a duty towards doing sacrifices. Just for example, we can take it when there are some we use mobile phones, isn't it? And we use a network to make calls and everything. And then what we do, we have to pay this network company every month. We use electricity at home, we use Wi-Fi at home, we rent a home, we have to pay the owner. So in the similar way, we are in this material world, and we are utilizing the material resources without giving anything. What are the material resources? The land, right? Even this body is being made by these material resources, right? The very important thing, the breathing, and more important, the sunlight, the moonlight, the vegetable that grows because of the moonlight, because of sunlight, everything is, you get light, right? So from where all this is coming? Are we not obliged to give some taxes to these persons? Because we are giving money to network provider, to our electricity board, isn't it? So, and even if you see logically, who is the electricity is actually being come from where? From water. And who has given this water?
Yeah.
Right. So that's the point. Basically, understanding that actually someone superior is there and trying to do something toward this.
Okay. So if we do everything for Krishna, and let's say if we, as example, you say we buy a mobile phone and we can use it hearing about Krishna, and in activities that we could, I mean, not only that, but also use it for Krishna's service, would that count as that could be spiritual, like that would not be material?
Yes. I mean, any endeavor for us towards approaching towards Krishna.
Okay.
So with for example, when you say about smartphone, I got an I remember one lecture by my Guru Maharaj. He was saying that these are smartphones, and we should be smart enough to use it.
True.
So, and he says, so what are the smartest things? Understanding that we are Krishna's servant and use this phone for his service. I mean, he says that, every phone should have Bhagavad Gita app, and you should read it when you should recite these verses. Right.
Very
And
true.
even one devotee was sharing that nice things, he says, okay, this is a phone, right? And then when you open the phone, and you can actually place a nice picture of Lord. So whenever you open the phone, you can actually see the Lord.
Yeah,
So
true.
that's the way this, material thing can be used for the service of Lord, for remembering Lord, for hearing about Lord, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, very true. Is there a Bhagavad Gita app actually?
Yes, it's there.
Okay, I'll have a look at it. Okay.
It's there.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Anyone
Thank
have
you.
any questions, thoughts? Well, you can stop here, and tomorrow we'll continue our book reading, and on Friday we'll try to cover up chapter 6. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Hare